And as I'm saying that, my daughter is peeking in the garage to see what I'm doing. Hey, what's going on? I'm sorry.
No, you're good, dude. Hey, we got 5 of them.
Hi.
Hi, sweetie.
Tell them, hey.
Hey.
Okay, I'm gonna talk to them for a little bit. You go up there and watch Bluey or something, okay? All right. So anyway, how are y'all doing, man?
Hey, dude, we're doing.
Yeah.
Living the dream. 5 girls.
Where are you guys at now? I think I talked to you a while back, and I can't remember where you told me where you guys were currently at.
We're in Portland, Oregon.
That's about all there is to say about that, huh?
Oh man,
Yikes.
never did I think I would ever come anywhere close to this place.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah, I pretty much feel the exact same way about California. I actually picked these orders to come out here, and man, it was so much fun when we first got here. I mean, because me and my wife, we're, high school sweethearts, grew up in the same hometown in Alabama. And then I joined the Navy, and then A school and ECS is in Mississippi. So, I mean, it was just a 3-hour drive from where we were. So, spent 5 years in Mississippi. Every deployment, she would go back home and be with family. So, it was almost like she never left. So, when it came time to pick orders, I was like, you know what? Let's go do something different. And I picked these orders out here for San Diego. And man, when we got here, it was just like being on a vacation every single day. And then it just went all to shit in March of last year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I'm from Tennessee. So ECS and everything, the furthest I was in Chicago for my A school. And then that was a far distance to me. And then we went back to Mississippi, and you never leave the South. And then I was like, Oregon, you know what? It can't be that bad. It's different. Let's check it out. And boy, let me tell you, it is awful up here.
I warned you.
Yeah. She's like, don't do it. I'm like, no, it's fine.
So are you still in, or did you get out?
I got out January of 19, so a couple years now.
Okay. Yeah,
it's different.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I've given it a lot of thought myself recently, just because I re-enlisted at the end of 2018 because I was like, what else am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And originally I was just going to do 3 years, get through my shore duty, and then see if I wanted to get out or not. But then they started talking about an SRB, and I was like, oh, well, you know what? I'll do another 3 on top of that. What's another 6 years? And, now I'm 3 years into this current contract, and I'm like, I'm getting too old for this shit. I don't I don't know if I can keep doing this.
Yeah, that's so I did the whole like SEAL stuff before I came to the CBs. And so the new instruction came out of where you had to fulfill your entire time. So they're trying to extend me in 11 for 18 months.
18 months, yeah.
And by that time, my contract was up. So I was like, you're going to either send me somewhere else or I'm getting out. No way in hell I'm staying here any longer. And they just kept, I guess they thought I was just kidding. Because then a couple chiefs gave me a first class package and was like, just re-enlist and we'll have you sign this now. And I was like, you're not getting me this time, buddy. Because that was the thing. They just kept trying to get me to re-enlist. But, her and the girls were here in Oregon the whole time, and I'm in Mississippi. So that distance, and so it wears on you.
That was awful. It was literally like there was no home port for us. It was either deployment or still across the country.
God, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, so that's when I was like, look, y'all are going to keep playing this game. Because, when I first got to battalion, they're like, all right, 2 years and you can transfer out. Those 2 years come and it's, we're trying. we're trying. We'll get you there. Or we're low manned with 17 people in my billet. 2 more years pass, and they're like, "Oh, we're trying." And I'm like, "Dude, all right, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done." So it definitely would have been nice to stay in, and I would have liked to, but because I was trying to get some recruiting orders up here, but they just love me too much in 11, I guess.
Yeah. I kind of had a love-hate relationship with 11 towards the end. Like that last home port, I did 3 deployments. Like literally as soon as I got out of ECS, I went on my first
Mhm.
deployment, went to Spain, and then
Yeah.
a year later went to Guam, and then the third deployment, I went to Guam again. And that last year was just so like I was like so ready to get out of the South. I was like, I've lived in the South my whole life. I want to do something different.
Hmm.
And it just got stupider and stupider and stupider and stupider. And then right there towards the end, when everybody left on deployment and I was there for like home port crew because I was about to transfer, it was just like agony every day. I was like, if I can get out of here, I don't know what I will do.
Hmm.
And then I finally left and I felt like, that scene at the end of Breaking Bad when Jesse is driving away from Walter and he's like crying in
Yeah.
the car. That's how I
Yeah.
felt driving off that base. I was like, finally, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And I kick myself in the ass for thinking that all the time because I got out here to California with the command I'm at now, and I would saw off a couple of my toes to go back to battalion at this point.
Yeah. That's how I feel too. Like I was so happy to be gone, packed up the U-Haul and drove up here, but it was like freedom. Finally, I'm done with all this bull crap you got to deal with. But now I'm just like, damn, I'd do about anything to go back for, a little bit.
Yeah, it's like prison up here.
Is it still like locked down and everything? I'm just
We're sliding back into it.
Yeah.
Everybody just wants to be governed so hard over here.
yeah.
We're already going back to you can't find TP and toilet paper in the stores. It's so dumb.
Oh my God.
Yeah, cleaning wipes, baby wipes. They just, first time we couldn't find baby wipes for our kids for like 3 months.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what they're using it for, but
They got limit signs on what you can buy, and it's slowly going back to the old nonsense.
That's so crazy because like I thought I've been kind of selfish this whole time and I've been looking at it just from the inside looking out because California, I feel like was such a center point of the focus for like, this is how you shouldn't be doing things. And being friends with everybody back in Alabama, like it was like 2 weeks into this whole thing. And I'm looking on Facebook and these people are hanging out, going to the bar, having a good old time. And
yeah.
I'm like, aren't y'all in lockdown? Like, aren't y'all scared? And they're like, no, not really. And I was like, at the time, I was like, y'all are being stupid. Like, this is gonna kill everybody. And after a couple of months, I was like, what's going on? Because I mean, it was just a whole new world. And I think it was like 3 months where we literally did not leave the house. Like,
Yeah.
I was on a staggered work schedule, which was way different than anything I was used to. So I only had to work like maybe 2-3 days a week. And then I actually enjoyed that because, I was home.
Right.
And, I looked at it like, hey, this is a good thing. Like I can stay here and work on my podcast and, write stand up and I can spend time with my family and only work 2 days a week. Like this is great. And then after about 3-4 weeks, I was like, okay, this is starting to get old.
Yeah.
And then once it got to the summer, I just saw how much it was affecting my wife and my daughter.
Hmm.
And especially after all of the riots and stuff, because it got bad here. I'm sure it got bad where you were.
Yeah, it got real bad where we were.
It got crazy here just for a few days. And I could just see.
It was months here, like over 90 days of crazy.
I'm sure. Like I remember watching all the news reports and seeing it all over the country, and then like seeing it happen. I remember distinctively, like when it got real bad here for us, there was a guy who went walking through downtown, and it was just a huge mob of people, and he recorded the
Mhm.
whole thing on Facebook Live. So we're sitting there watching his Facebook Live video and watching the news at the same time, but there's like a 10-second delay on the news. So you'd be watching it, and then something would happen, like somebody would throw a tear gas canister or something, and then we'd be like, something just happened. Everybody's running and screaming. And then you'd see it happen on the news like right after that. So
Oh,
I mean, it was like watching a Batman movie.
mhm.
And we're from a itty bitty small town in Alabama, so we're not used to anything like that. And around that time, I was like, hey, why don't y'all go back to Alabama for just a couple of weeks? Just get your mind off things, go be around family. And my wife went with my daughter, and then she came back and she was like, it's a whole new world down here.
Mhm.
And I was like, really? So a few months later, after just sitting here doing nothing, we went back in November, and it was like getting in a time machine because we went back, and I mean, we did everything you could do. We went out to eat. I did comedy for the first time in a couple of months. Like, it was just awesome. So pretty much our real only times of like joy that have come out of this experience have been going back to the South or going on like a vacation.
Mhm.
It's gotten a lot better since then. We went back in around May, and we actually went to Disney World around that same time. And then right as I came back, my wife and my daughter stayed out there for a few more weeks just because my daughter was about to start school, and I wanted her to like kind of have some summertime fun with her grandparents.
Mhm.
And it had just got to where, everybody was like, hey, you can take your mask off and do whatever you want to. And it was like overnight. Like it wasn't like a creep back in. It was like, hey, boom, we're not dealing with this anymore. And it was like really surprising. And
Mhm.
believe it or not, it's kind of stayed like that since then.
We had that for like a month. It was nice.
We got like 24 days with no mask. But the South's been like that for like a year now. I
Oh
talked to
yeah.
people. Oh yeah, we haven't worn a mask since last year.
Yeah, I got my parents in Florida just living like Jimmy Buffett, like nothing's happening. And I'm pretty jealous.
Yeah. Florida was the place to be if you
Yeah, with this whole time.
when we went back to Disney World, I was like, just like, because we were pretty much staying on property, and they had just changed the rules from, hey, so you only have to wear a mask when you're indoors or
Mhm.
like in line for a ride. So we were like, oh, this is great because we didn't have to walk around with it on. And as soon as we got off of the Disney property, and I think we went into a Chick-fil-A, it was just like none of the workers were wearing a mask. None of the people in there buying anything were wearing a mask. We're like, no
Mhm.
posters up saying, hey, you need to wear a mask. Nothing. It was just like, man, this is great. But it's gotten better. A lot of it was because our governor was facing a recall election up until last week, and he beat it. So now we're all just kind of sitting
Mhm.
on needles, wondering like, okay, is he gonna seek retribution because we tried to get rid of him? But so far, I mean, nothing has changed. So our fingers are crossed that he doesn't decide to go back to how it was.
Oh, it's ridiculous here. Our older girls are they're doing cheerleading, and it's so bad that like, okay, I don't know how this makes sense, but they have to wear masks while they practice. And then as soon as you get there, spectators have to wear a mask. And then once the game actually starts, they can take off their masks, even though you're in the same space around the same people. I don't know how that works.
That's so crazy to me. My daughter, she just started kindergarten, and she has to wear a mask indoors at school. But luckily, since her school is really like close to a beach. They do a lot of stuff outside. And
Oh,
so they really incentivize like being outside. They eat lunch outside. They really minimize the amount of time they spend indoors because they're outside. They don't have to wear a mask.
mhm.
But that's
They do
what's so.
here.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, they do here. You have to wear a mask outside.
Yeah,
That's
man. Let
what's
me say, there's nothing worse than seeing somebody drive by themselves with a mask on, or riding a bicycle on the sidewalk with a mask on. I saw a dude with no helmet on a motorcycle, but he had his mask on, and that's just wild, wild.
yeah. It's the same thing here. We have a little running path, not 15 feet from our house, and they put a gate around that entire area when this all first started because it's considered a national park. And I mean, it was like something out of a movie because we just see them dragging this fence and it went out like we live right on the bay and it went out to the ocean. And it was like, you can't be over here. And then when they finally removed that fence, like 6, 7 months later, there were all these signs posted like, you cannot run on this path without a mask on. So I'd be out. I was like, I'm not buying into this bullshit. I'm trying to run. I'm trying to breathe.
Mm,
And there'd be people out there jogging with a mask on their face. And I'm like, dude, there's one other person out here. It's 6 o'clock in the morning,
yeah,
you know? Like if you're that scared, I mean, I understand if you want to put your mask up as we're running by, but I'd see them like 300 yards away and they'd have a mask on while they were running.
oh, dude, that's what I'm saying. That's everyone here. They look at you. They look at you bad if you're by yourself without a mask. I can be, 100 feet away from somebody, and they're just like, "Ugh, hey, you're outside. There's no one around me.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna spit on you from over here."
People are super vocal here too. Like they are very.
We got
They
all the
will-
Karens.
Yes, lots of them.
Goodness gracious.
It-
Are y'all
it'll
like
be-
considering moving out of there and at some point, or are y'all just gonna stick it out? Like,
No, I mean, right now we kind of have to stick it out. And he's at the tail end of getting into law enforcement here.
oh, cool. Okay.
So that'll be interesting. Just-
Yeah, we'll see. Because that's definitely. I mean, rules are the rules, I guess. I'm kind of back and forth with that stuff because we definitely, what we fight for is not mandates. It's not all this other stuff. But, when I'm a cop, they have to enforce it kind of stuff. So we'll see. I'm just kind of going with the win. We'll see how it goes.
I definitely don't see us staying here though. As soon as we
Long
have an
term,
option.
yeah, long term, we won't be here.
Yeah.
One of your previous podcasts about when you were in Florida, saying that about how I guess your stomach was bugging you because you're used to the more clean eating over here. I have to say that'll be like the one thing that I appreciate and would miss about here is I feel like the food over and on the West Coast is really amazing. And I go visit other places and I miss it. But other than that, I think that's like all I'm gonna miss. Certainly not gonna miss the weather up here.
Yeah. Is it cold up there right now?
It's like 60s right now, so not bad. In the mornings, it's getting down to probably 40.
Damn.
So we're in that fall, kind of starting to get cold, but not too bad.
We have like 30-degree swings right now
Yeah.
between morning and like heat of the day.
Good Lord.
Yeah, let me tell you, I have to wear a damn trench coat in the morning and tank top and shorts in the afternoon.
I was just in Vegas just a few days ago, and I went for the first time back in July,
Ooh,
and it was 118 degrees
Ooh,
during the
yeah.
day.
We've had a few of those here, like a few week stretches.
yeah,
Where it was like insanely hot for no reason.
yeah. I think it hit 118 here too.
Yeah.
I decided that I was going to ride my motorcycle from the gym home in 118 degrees.
He came back purple.
I was purple, man.
I'm
Purple.
sure.
I had to take a knee in front of the fan because I felt like I just slammed a 6-pack and got on the bike. I started blacking out in my driveway and I was like, I need some AC or something. It was just so hot. And you're like, oh, maybe I'll go faster. It'll cool me down. And it's just like an oven.
And I don't know about there where you're at, but here it's not standard to have AC. There is a ton of people without AC. Like
Oh
a ton.
yeah, it's the same here. Like when I first got here, I moved in with a friend just while I was waiting on our house to become available to me, and they didn't have AC.
Oh no.
And I was like, is this normal? Because I mean, I'm from Alabama and lived in Mississippi. Like it ain't normal not to have
Yeah,
the
yeah.
house 62 degrees when I go to bed at night.
Mm.
And they were like, oh, we just open the windows and there's a breeze. And I'm like, it's 85 degrees in your house right now. So when I got over to this house, it had AC and I cranked that thing up as far as it'll go. And I turned this house into a damn ice box at night.
Yeah, we have AC, and then I have a window, or not like a portable unit, because that's what I do is I sleep with it at like 58 degrees. But that was my thing because when I moved up here, we moved into this house, and she's like, oh well, maybe we can just we don't need AC. A lot of houses don't have AC, and I was like, not a chance. Being from the South, it is like I will have AC if I only turn it on 4 times, that's fine, but I will have it.
Yeah, and it broke down. We had a stretch where it needed to be repaired, and
yeah, we went through the similar thing. It's 90 degrees in this house, and
he's like, oh well, that's okay, we can live without AC for 24 hours or so. And I'm like, 24 hours. The tech was like, we'll be here in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, because if AC breaks down there, you get 24 hours. So I'm like, oh, it's fine. It'll be tomorrow. No, 3 weeks out, and I'm dying at like hour 2. It's like sitting in my freezer.
Yeah. This question that I have is more for Chelsy than you, Tyler. So I've had the distinct pleasure of sleeping in a bed next to you for a period of time. And my question is, Chelsy, how do you sleep at night with him snoring as loud as he does?
Yeah, it wasn't well at all. But yes,
I had to get my
it's going much better now.
Yeah, that cranky old Vader man.
Yeah, you got the sleep apnea machine now, and it's much better for me anyways. I mean, it does sound like Darth Vader, but it's better than a grizzly bear juggling chainsaws.
Yeah, like so we shared a room together, like right towards the end of a deployment. And I just remember I moved in there and I laid down and he was over there knocked out, and it was so loud. And I had those little foamy hearing protecting things, and I'd done this with other roommates before where I just put one in one ear and then I'd lay my head down on the pillow so I could hear my phone go off in the mornings. And I just got used to it. And but if I turned over or anything in the middle of the night, it was just like somebody was playing the drum right next to my ear. I was like, how in the hell is he snoring so loud?
When the baby was born, I was like, if you wake her up, she's yours the rest of the night. So he was just like, I'm not sleeping in here.
Yeah, I gotta go find different rooms to sleep in so I don't wake anybody up.
My wife, she tells me that I snore really, really loud, especially if I've been drinking a lot.
Yes.
And she makes so much fun of me because of it. Because, like, I think I went out for my birthday like a year or so ago, and she was the DD, and I drank way too much. And I came back, and she said I was snoring, but it wasn't like even just like a regular snore. I guess I was on my back, and like every time I would like breathe out, I would just be like, she was like, it was something out of a cartoon.
I'll record him sometimes just so he knows what I have to deal with.
I tell my wife to, she never does. I'm like, it must not really be that bad. And she was like, no, last night you were snoring really loud. And I'll be like, I kind of believe you because my throat is real sore.
Yeah, that's how I know too. It's like, oh, did I snore last night? She's like, buddy, here, listen to this.
The, the worst part with all these masks wearing though is that he tries to rip his sleep apnea mask off at night because he's just so sick of having something on his face all day. And so I'm like, all of this, peacefully sleeping, and then all of a sudden it's a nightmare. And I'm like, why did you take that off? And he's just like, I didn't even know I did. I can't handle it on my face anymore.
Yeah, the same as you though. Like if I drink, I just stay on the couch because I know I'm not welcome in a bedroom anywhere.
Yeah.
I snore so bad.
I get to where I'll drink a little bit and I'll go lay down and get in bed. And then I'll wake up like 3 hours later, like just electrified with energy. So, my wife's like, where are you going? And I'm like, I don't want to bother you because I know I'm going to toss and turn and roll and stuff and try and get comfortable again. So I'll just move down to the couch and I'll sleep there for another couple of hours.
I don't know how you did it because there was a lot of drinking on deployment. So you had a lot of bad snores.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's kind of the thing to do. Like especially like somewhere in Guam, because you're just right there in the smoke pit and it's like, all right, well, what are we going to do tonight? I'm going to drink a couple of beers and just hang out, talk some shit. And I'd get into, like, for me, I would get into like a regiment where I would just have like 3-4 beers and then I'd start feeling kind of sleepy and I'd try and go get in bed at like 9:30 and I'd sleep like a baby.
Yeah, he'd always be like, oh, I'm going to the smoke pit again. And like legitimately, I was like, you guys sure have a lot of barbecues.
Mm-hmm.
And he, what? And I'm like, that's what a smoke pit is, right? Like, I thought it was like a barbecue place. And he's like, no.
Oh yeah.
It's not where we go to grill meat.
The village idiots hang out.
You can stay out of trouble in there too, believe it or not. Like some people are like, oh, there ain't nothing but trouble in the smoke pit. And I'm like, it's 10 feet away from your room.
Mm-hmm.
Where you get in trouble is out in town.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah.
That's what I tell a lot of these younger guys now. I catch myself telling them so many stories from when I was in battalion. And, a lot of them are like 17, even 18 years old. And here they are in San Diego where, you could pay somebody $15 and they'll take you across the border into Tijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll ask me if I want to come with them. And I'm like, I'm not 21 anymore. And I'm like, I'm married. I got a kid. I'm not trying to get into the same type of reckless behavior that y'all might be. And I tell all of them, I'm like, look, if you get in trouble, I'll come help you. But you just need to realize like there's only so much I can do once you cross over that border.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily none of them have gotten into any trouble. They've all kind of kept their wits about them. But I catch myself telling them stories all the time about some shit that I saw or like something that happened where like one wrong move and I would have been standing there at captain's mast with everybody.
Yeah.
So it was good times though. I look back at even like FEX and shit like that. I catch myself telling them about it. Like I got some junior guys now that are like thinking about picking orders. And I'm like, hey, if you don't want to go to a boat, I got the place for you to go.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go shoot guns and shit and go camp in the woods? This is the place to be.
Mm-hmm.
But so how did you guys meet? I've always wondered about you two, how you came to be Mr. and Mrs.
Go ahead, buddy.
So I had a little brother that was in the Navy. He went through boot camp. He made it to Fort Leonard Wood, and then he ended up dying in the barracks.
Oh man, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was an awful traumatic thing for the family. But I ended up flying out there, and because they had his command service there. So I actually met him there when I got picked up, and I was driven to Fort Leonard Wood because there was all those riots were going on, and it was that or take that little plane they like to drive you in. And I was like, heck no. So I went there and kind of got the grand tour of the place, and they took us on to they took us to the barracks and just kind of tried to show us like a day in the life of what he was experiencing. And that's where I met him there before the service. And then his death was very taboo and everybody was very tight-lipped. Nobody, I was, healthy 27-year-olds don't just drop dead. So I was like, I need some answers. What the heck happened to him? And nobody would tell me anything. I was supposed to be able to see his body when we were there. And then it was like, no, just kidding. We had FBI involved. We had NCIS, like that. I mean, we had the Army base involved, and then we had, Navy. It was just crazy. And nobody would tell me what happened to him or my parents or anything like that. So naturally, that's not going to be good enough for me. So I flew back home and I took to social media and was like, I'm going to contact every single person I can think of who might have known him or have any inclination to what happened to him. Because they basically said, we'll let you know what happened, but they all wanted to finish their investigations first. So that was in like February of 15. So
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
in May.
Yeah, May is when he finally he connected with me on social media. And by then things were wrapping up and I wanted answers, and he felt bad for me that I didn't know.
Yeah, because I was the company commander, I think it's called. So I was like the little school kid in charge of all the rest. And they're like, we don't want any rumors being spread. We don't want you to say anything to anybody. And you need to make sure no one says anything to anybody either. So that was kind of my main responsibility while her and her mom and dad were, visiting Fort Leonard Wood. And so I knew the whole time. And then she's asking around of what happened. And of course, I'm like, don't you tell her, don't say anything. So then May rolled around and things started to quieten down. So I reached out and was like, hey, this is what happened. This is why no one was talking to you, kind of thing.
And at the time I was, you get comfort from the people who loved him, who knew him, all of that. And I really enjoyed hearing people's experiences and all that stuff. So that's how we started. We became friends through that. And then it, over time evolved into what it is now.
That's man, that's really an incredible story. I had no idea that any of that stuff happened. I'm really sorry that happened. But something did good come out of it. I mean, you guys, I always see your pictures and stuff. And
what would have happened with him here? No way.
No.
Because we're actually pretty good buddies, and he'd get super pissed off if you mentioned Chelsy around him, because I guess his friends like to tease him about it too. Every time I'd be like, hey, so what's your sister? And he'd be like, we're not talking about it. And I was like, all right.
And that's my dad.
It's definitely turning in his grave every day.
My dad's only son. So he, it was a horrible loss, but he's gained a son through it too. So it's been a hell of a silver lining.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I see y'all's pictures all the time, and y'all just, I've always wondered, like, how did they meet? Because I mean, obviously, I realize there is an age difference between you two, and
Yes,
it's always been curious to me because, like, my mom, her second marriage, she married a guy who was 10 years younger than her.
Mm-hmm.
After she divorced, they were never together during the course of my childhood, my biological father and my mom. And so I was pretty much just raised by her. And then she met this guy that they went to church together when I was 3, and he was 18 and
Woo.
she was 28.
Mm-hmm.
And they started dating and they got married. And I mean, this dude was only 15 years older than me, and they were together for 13 years. So it was
Mm-hmm.
almost like we kind of grew up together.
Dude, that's because JC, our oldest, is 13. Should be 14 in January. I'm only 29. So there's about the same. It's weird for sure, but I mean, I think we're just at different points in our lives that kind of match up. I think that's where it really mattered.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've
The,
got
oh, go ahead.
that.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
we've got like a 7.5 year spread.
Okay. So that's not quite a 10-year time span, because
Mhm.
as I got older, I definitely started kind of picking up on things like, man, that was really stupid for him to do that. And
Yeah.
my mom would always pull me aside and be like, you better not ever do some shit like this to your wife.
Hey, dude, that's fine because that's what we joke. Because I'm definitely the sixth kid in this house.
Absolutely.
I have my kids telling me like, "What are you doing right now?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
I mean, it was kind of cool because like I was the oldest of all of my siblings, and all of my siblings are half siblings. I have a sister. Actually, I have 2 sisters through my dad. One of them is 23 and the other one is 7. And I've never met her before. Um, and then the other 2 were through my mom's second marriage. And I spent most of my time with them, but it was just like he was just like a buddy to me. Like we played PlayStation together and played
Mhm.
NCAA college football on the PlayStation 2, and he would always bet me money like I wouldn't be able to beat him. So I'd get really good trying to beat him. And he would always like have me play all the other neighborhood kids, and I would just smear them because I was playing against an adult all the time. And yeah, it was really wild whenever they got divorced. She's remarried since then, to somebody who's actually just a few years older than she is. And, that's who my daughter calls her grandfather is, Papa Jerry. But, yeah, like my dad, I didn't have a whole lot to do with him, throughout my entire life. And he actually passed away back in, January. And that was a really weird experience. Kind of like you said, like I really didn't know the whole story. A lot of
Mhm.
things kind of came into the light. But the silver lining that came out of it was I kind of rekindled a relationship with my sister on his side. And we still to this day, we check in with each other. And, I got to meet her fiance, and he's just the sweetest guy. And, so I always try to look at things like that through a tragedy, something good can come out of
Mhm.
it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually had something. So I have my birth father wasn't. I met him like a couple times, but my older brother passed away last Thanksgiving. And so my birth father and I talk a lot more, and we chat and stuff. And that's a good thing that came out of that. It's a really weird experience because you don't know how to feel or what's going on. And like this person was attached to you and they passed away. And so you're just like, well, I didn't know him too well and I would have liked to, but like how are you supposed to feel? And you don't have any details. They're just because I'm like, well, what happened? They're like, well, he's gone. And I'm like, okay, but that didn't answer my question.
Yeah. That was what happened when my dad passed, because I'd only seen him twice in like the past 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, it had been like a 7-year stretch before I'd seen him. He actually came to my first open mic when I was 18. He just showed up randomly because he lived in the city that I performed in. And I'd put it out on Facebook like, hey, come see me at the Stardome in Birmingham. I'm going to go on stage for the first time. And he showed up with his new wife, and my mom and my girlfriend, who ended up being my wife, were there. So it was just this crazy, weird situation for everybody. And I saw him a few years after that. He had just come into Montgomery and he's like, hey, I want to buy you some clothes. And I was like, okay, you know?
Yeah.
And then it was years later, you know, I've gotten married, I've had a kid, and my grandmother passed away. And when we were at her funeral, that was the last time I actually saw him, but he didn't look good. He, you know, he had problems with alcohol and drugs his entire life. And he looked just as old as my grandfather, but I remember seeing him and talking to him. And, you know, it was just like a year or so later, you know, I get a call from my sister and she tells me, hey, this happened. She didn't even expect me to come down. And, you know, I told her like, hey, I can be there if you need me to help you with things. Cause I mean, it was pretty much just her dealing with everything with his, you know, arrangements and whatnot. And I was like, I can come be down there and help you. And, you know, I hopped on a plane. I was there for like 4 days, and, you know, I got a lot of questions answered, and, you know, I flew right back. It was, my command was like in shock because they were like, how much time do you need? Like, it's real weird dealing with any type of convalescent situation because they still charge you for that leave. And I was like, I just need 4 days. If I can just get there, fill out any paperwork that needs to be filled out, you know, do what I need to do, I can be back by the end of the week. And, you know, they were cool with it. But, you know, I thought about not going just because I didn't have much of a relationship with him. But it definitely, I'm glad that I did now, looking back at it. But yeah, so you guys have 5 kids.
5. Yep.
5, dude.
Ranging from ages 14.
Do what?
Ranging from ages 14 to what's the youngest
To
one?
a little over 1.
Yeah, we have 1, 3, 5. Well, the 3-year-old's almost 4, but 1, 3, 5, 12, and 13. Almost 14.
Good Lord.
Yeah, dude, let me tell you, you're just like when you first get started, and you're like, 5's not a lot, it's fine. I got 3, 2 more's not that bad, but then you got, our kids are damn hellions.
Yeah, let's make sure to point out they're all females. So there's a lot of emotions going on in this house.
Yeah, some I can't even, like, I have to whistle at them. I can't yell for them because they just start breaking down and crying.
Yeah, you hurt their feelings.
And I'm just trying to get your attention. I just need you to come here for a second. They're, ah!
He's yelling at me. No, he's just a male. He has a deep voice.
Yeah. Yeah. So like you get to 4 and you're like, this is kind of a lot. And then the 5th one, it's funny too, because I'll see people with 5 kids on like Facebook or something. I'm like, damn, that's a lot of kids. And then I'm just like, how is that even, like, golly? And then I'm like, oh, the picture on our walls got the same amount of people.
Yeah.
I don't think you really realize it until you see a photo and there's 19 people in one picture.
Yeah, I watch those shows sometimes, like 19 kids and counting, and I'm like, these people did this just to get this television show.
You have to, because let me tell you, whew, I'm only here a few hours a day and it wears me out. I couldn't imagine like every day, all day.
We just have 1, and I'm like, I don't know how people have 2. I can't even imagine. Like, my wife, she only has 1 sister, and her parents have been together 30 plus years. And, you know, I'm not super close with any of my siblings. So at times it feels like I was kind of like a only child. And so we just have the one right now. And she's as sweet as can be, but she is just spoiled rotten.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is from me, just because, you know, I've always wanted to, you know, give my kids, excuse me, the life that I didn't really get growing up. And, but at the same time, like I want her to appreciate what she has and like, you know, realize like, hey, you were pretty privileged, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And we get a lot of questions like, when are y'all gonna have another one? You know, when you gonna have us another grandbaby? And I'm like, I'd like just the one. I like our little tripod that we got.
Yeah, ours is like,
Are y'all done
are you
yet?
Yeah.
How many are gonna pop out?
or it's, are you gonna try for a boy?
Yeah. We definitely, I think after the fourth one, I was like, boys just are not in my cards. And then the last one, I was like, it's gonna be a boy. I just had this weird feeling. I'm like, yeah, it's a boy.
No.
And then finally we get the call for the gender and everything, and it's like, surprise, it's another girl. And I was like, yeah, I figured.
I told you.
We me and my wife got together when we were 16. And from like when we first started dating, I guess it was just like we were still just trying to find stuff to talk about when we first started dating. And, you know, we came upon the subject of like, hey, if, you know, you had a little girl, what would you name her? So my wife knew the name of our daughter when she was 16.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, that was just what we always had picked out. But when she actually got pregnant, we were like, well, what are we going to name him if it's a boy? You know? And so we really never like decided like, okay, if it's a boy, what is the
Mm-hmm.
name going to be? And it was a crazy time because, you know, we literally got married in September. And then 2.5, 3 weeks later, I was on a plane going to boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
Go to boot camp, get 3 phone calls the entire time we're there.
Yeah.
And then her and her mom drove up for graduation, and they were only there for one day. And that was super awkward because, you know, I mean, we were a newly married couple, and I had just finished 2 months on the inside. So I don't need to go into detail about what that conversation was like. Like, okay, well, we're gonna go up to the room for a little while. And but you know, everything was cool. And luckily my A school was in Mississippi. So every weekend she would drive from Alabama to Mississippi, and we would, you know, get us a hotel room and spend time together and go see movies. And just, you know, it was like we just had a date weekend all weekend. And then the same thing in ECS. She would just drive from Alabama and come on down to Gulfport. And then it was like right when I checked into battalion, I didn't have a great sponsor because the rest of the battalion was already on deployment. And
Same.
I didn't know shit. Like I was like, I don't
Dude.
know what I'm doing. And they let me stay in a barracks room when I was in ECS, even though they weren't supposed to because I got BAH. So when I checked into battalion, he was like, you got a house yet? And I was like, no, you're telling me I'm about to go on deployment. And he was like, well, we ain't got nowhere for you to stay. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So it was this insanely stressful time. And then to top it all off, my wife tells me, hey, I'm pregnant.
Boom.
So I am freaking out because I don't know what the right move is. I'm like, do I get a house? And, you know, there were a couple of people that went to Spain around the same time as me who had just checked in. They got a house. They flew their wife down from like Ohio or something. And they're unpacking boxes, not even 24 hours after she gets there. And they come home and they're like, hey, I got to leave for deployment in 2 hours. So I was really scared that a situation like that would happen. So luckily, I just toughed it out. I stayed at the gateway for like 10 days. And then my flight popped and I was gone. And I was like, okay, cool. And then we were on deployment, and I knew, I was like, I want to have a girl. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was because I was primarily raised by my mom, but I want to have a little girl. And sure enough, she called me and told me, yep, we're having a little girl. So I went from leaving like literally like 2 or 3 weeks after she got pregnant and finding out that she was pregnant to coming back, and she's 6 months.
Huge. Yep.
And so it was different for a little while, but everything went fine. And
That's great. It was like you were, like you said, young, newly married, and then gone a lot. And then the first real stretch that you're there for like a long time, she's big.
yeah, she was big and pregnant. And it was, I mean, it didn't change anything or anything about the way I felt about her or anything like that. She was about 8 months, and we were coming back from Alabama. We had a baby shower,
Mm-hmm.
and she was driving, big 8-month pregnant stomach. And we hydroplaned on a bridge coming from Alabama into Mississippi,
Yeah.
and completely totaled our car.
Oh.
And it was in the middle of the night, scared us to death. Like, I still to this day thinking about it, I'm like, it is a wonder we survived, because we hydroplaned, our car started spinning. We had another car like T-bone us, and that pushed us up onto like the side of the bridge. Like the back of our car was like up on the barrier, and then another car hit us head on and pushed our car a little bit farther, but it didn't push us in the water. And it was like a 30-foot drop to like black swamp Mississippi water.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
And I feel like we're blessed to this day that we didn't go in that water, because all I could think as soon as that car started spinning was, we're about to go in this water.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to have to get her out big and pregnant while this car fills up with water. So luckily, everything was fine. I got out right there, and we had our dog with us, and our car was filled with like baby presents. And I mean, it's just pouring rain, and I don't even have a leash for our dog. So I call the ambulance and tell them, hey, we need you to come get my wife. She's pregnant. They came and picked her up, took her on to the hospital. And there I am, just standing out there on the interstate, talking to the police, holding our little bitty dog. And I had to get a ride from the police to the hospital. And then the hospital wouldn't let me in because I had a dog.
Oh.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm just out there like, I have no idea what's going on with my wife, because she doesn't have her phone with her. I'm thinking, she might be going into labor right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost was like, I'm about to let this dog go. But luckily, my in-laws drove down. They were there like 3 hours later, and they just put the dog in their car and let us go in. And she had some contractions due to stress, but she got through it and everything was fine. And all I could remember the whole time was like, my whole chain of command was like, hey, is everything all right? You gonna make it to muster in the morning?
Oh my God.
And I'm like,
Gotta love them for that, man.
I was like, hey, it got to the point to where I was like taking selfies with my wife in the bed behind me. And I'm like, we are still in the hospital. We are not going to be leaving until like 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Here we are. This is where I am. I will text you in the morning. But, long story short, a couple months later, she gave birth to a insanely healthy, beautiful baby girl. And she's still, I mean, y'all just saw her when we started this thing. She's still just as healthy. So, that's kind of that's the only kid story I have right now. I might be jinxing myself. We might be having another one on the way or something. I hope not, knock on wood, because we're content with it. We like just having the one. So
Yeah, that's well, we got the 5 and I got snip, make sure it stays that way. So I mean, same
my,
track.
my wife has talked to me about it, and I'm not really scared to do it. I just, I'm curious like what it's
I was
like.
terrified. Oh my God, it was
Your
well
story is not typical.
So worst thing ever. However, like Seth, he got his done probably about 6 months after me, and he had no problems. But so we go and I, get the procedure done, and so we have a 65-inch TV that's on like a 50-pound mount. Well, to center the TV in the wall, I didn't put it on studs like a dummy. I was just like, I'm just gonna put all these anchors in it. It'll be fun.
And it's the kind that like you can pull out and tilt different.
Yeah,
directions.
you can move it around. So I sit in my chair. I got like a frozen bag of peas on my groin.
And they explicitly tell you do not lift anything heavy for like a week, but very specifically, don't do any lifting of any sort for the first like 3 days. Like you go in on a Friday, they don't want you doing anything until maybe you have to go back to work on Monday, kind of a thing.
Yeah, so I sit down and she's getting me set up because I don't want to move a whole lot. And, you're super tender after.
Put a recliner there, and he wants to game. He wants to be just set up so he can just sit there all weekend and game.
Yeah, so she takes this TV and angles it because I'm sitting to the left of the TV. So she angles it, and as she does it, all the weight, the TV just fell straight out the wall
onto me,
and it fell onto her. And so reaction was, this thing is heavy, get it off. So I just ripped the TV and the mount off. And then after my adrenaline, slowed down and, went away, it was not a good time.
This
after
thing
that,
came out like the mount, the TV, the sheetrock, and all, like everything on top of me.
God.
And he mans it up. And then after it, we're like, oh crap, you just lifted that. You just jumped out of your chair. And this is explicitly the number one thing they tell you not to do.
Dude, it crippled me for like 2 weeks.
It was close. It was like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You were in bad shape.
Yeah, because you're like, oh, it's not a big deal, whatever. It was the biggest deals. I couldn't do it for like a few days, dude. I was like wounded little puppy in the damn corner. And then probably about a week later, probably a few days to a week later, I could actually like kind of get up again. And then another 2 weeks, it was a rough time, dude. So definitely, if you ever do it, just listen to the doctor.
And of course, by week 3, I'm like, all right, are you just milking this?
Yeah, she's like, you're fine, get up. I'm like, I'm still swollen and everything, and just like moving like an old man.
Like he said, you'd be fine in a week.
Moral of the story is use studs when you put your TV up, and don't lift heavy stuff after procedure.
I don't know. I mean, we're still kind of, because we talked about it years ago. Like, I mean, our little one's still like only like 2, and we talked about it because we were like, oh, I'm just content with just having one. And I was like, well, what if we change our minds? And they're like, well, you can reverse the procedure. And I'm like, I'm scared to go through the procedure again, and get it, unknotted. So
yeah, that's my thing. Because that's, I'm 28 getting a vasectomy, and the doctor's like, you sure? I'm like, dude, I have 5 kids. If my wife and I don't stay together, there's no reason to have any more. 5's enough. And he's like, it's a fair point. And then we just, because it's weird. It's definitely weird. Like you're laying there, just your shirt on, and this man just busts in here, and he's like, all right, let's get going. And then he gets all his tools and stuff set up, and he just starts manhandling my junk. And I'm like, what is going on? It's just another day in the office. So he takes this big iodine sponge and just starts sponging me up, dude. Just like I'm a cow or something, or bull, just getting ready to get me done. And then he starts talking, you're just having a casual conversation. Well, you get some numbing shots, which are not very pleasant. And then he's just, this whole time he's talking to you like nothing's going on, and you're just like, you're trying to have the conversation because you don't want to think about what's going on. But as this dude's just manhandling your junk, it's still in the back of your mind, like, what is this guy doing?
Good God.
So then like, I'm just like, because I'm just staring up at the wall because you're on your back or the ceiling. I'm just trying my best to hold this conversation and ignore everything that's happening. And then, I'm talking to him, and you just see the smoke start to come up to the ceiling. And and it's like, all right, well, I'm cutting you open. And that's what it is. It's like a little heating knife, and it's just the smell, and you're trying to talk, and just this chimney stack just keeps going with smoke. And you're just like, what in the hell is going on? And then doing my best here, and you just the smoke signals going on in my groin area. So it's, and then you start, like, you can feel them in there and stuff, but it doesn't hurt. It's just, it was wild. It was uncomfortable, but not really painful. But you definitely want to be sure. That's for sure.
Well, I was sure. So I was planning on just being the one to get the tubal ligation after the last baby, but we found out through her last ultrasound that she had gallstones as a fetus. So like, it was recommended that I not go through healing from that at the same time that I'm gonna have a baby that's passing gallstones.
Man,
which was great advice.
Yeah, because it's like a few weeks for tube time, or a few days for a man to do it. So
supposed to be
Volin forced to step up to that.
I never had any like real procedures done, so I guess that's why it makes me kind of nervous. But I don't get like squeamish around like blood or like seeing inside. Like me and my wife were just talking about it a few days ago. Whenever my daughter was born, she had a C-section, and it was wild because like they had told us the day before that they were going to induce her because she was at full term, and they're like, hey, tomorrow your baby is going to be born. So we're like, okay, and we had it all lined up through with my leave and everything. I was like, this is great. And we had my in-laws come down because they wanted to be there for it and everything. And we had just gone to pick them up from the front gate, got them settled in bed, and we're like, hey, early tomorrow morning, we're going to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And then my wife is up moving around, and I'm laying in bed. I'm almost asleep because I'm thinking like these next couple of days, I'm not going to sleep hardly at all. And she's about to get in the bed, and she's like, hey, I think my water just broke. And I'm like, there's no way. Because she's thought this like 4 or 5 times throughout the past couple of weeks, the pregnancy. I'm like, there's no way. And she stands up out of bed, and it sounded like somebody just threw a bucket of water on the floor. And I was like, well, there it is. And I get dressed, and we get to the hospital. And soon as they take her in there, they're like, oh yeah, you're already like 4 centimeters dilated. Like this baby is coming soon. So they say, yeah, we're still going to go ahead and do the C-section. And they're like, so we're going to go ahead and give her the epidural. And you and your mother-in-law, y'all just wait in the waiting room. We're going to come back and get you in 20 minutes. So I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting there. This is I forget the name of the hospital. It was right there in Gulfport. We didn't go to the base at Keesler. We didn't go to the actual hospital on Keesler.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there, and I remember it was right after that San Bernardino shooting, because that was what was on the news. And I'm just sitting there talking to my mother-in-law, and I'm looking at the clock, and it's like 2:23. And I was like, they're supposed to come get me at 2:20. Like, what's going on? She was like, well, maybe, they'll come and get you in a few minutes. I'm like, no, fuck that. I'm going to go see what's going on. So I walk down the hallway to the nurse's desk and I'm like, hey, where's my wife? Because I look into the room and she's not in there. And they're like, oh, are you dad? And I go, yeah. And they're like, oh, they're already in there. They're ready for you. And I'm like, what? So I throw my smock on real quick, get the whole get up going. And I get my mother-in-law to take my picture real quick. And I run in there and they're asking me before I go in, they're like, hey, blood and guts don't make you squeamish. You're not going to pass out or anything, are you? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm good. And they're like, all right, do us a favor. Do not take your eyes off the floor when you walk in here, because you're going to go in the door on the other side of the curtain from her. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck, okay. And I open the door and my wife's stomach is cut open and all of her intestines and all of that is laying on the table next to her. And I'm just like, whoa. And they walk me around the room back to where her head is. And she was like, I feel them doing something. And I'm like, you don't feel what's happening right now. She's like, what's it look like? And I'm like, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it later. And I was in there maybe 3-4 minutes. And the doctor was up by her head, standing close to me. He was like holding me by my arm. And he was like, you're not going to pass out, are you? You're not going to pass out. I'm like, no, I'm good. And that doctor reached his hand into her stomach like that far. And I just couldn't, but I was like, am I on pumped or something? Like, why are they reaching so far? It felt like he was reaching through the table.
Yeah.
And they pulled my daughter out and they showed her to us. And they took her over there, cleaned her up real quick. And they let me pick her up right from that thing and walk her over to my wife. And, I show her to my wife and we get our first family picture made. And then they tell me I can just walk with her down the hallway to the NICU. And I'm like, you want me to walk with her down? So I've never been more careful in my life carrying anything. Like I was walking super slow because, she only weighed like 9 pounds. So I'm like, this little fragile thing. Yeah. I'm afraid I'm going to trip or drop her or something. And we took her down the hallway and they fed her, and just a few hours later, they were bringing us into the room and brought her in there, and it was all good. But
I mean, that's one thing to see somebody just in general in that state, but to see like a loved one, that would be crazy.
Yeah, I don't think she could have handled it. Had it been the other way around? If I'd been laying there, talking,
they asked me in a mirror to see what's going on just with the, natural delivery, and I was like, heck no thanks, I know what's happening.
Yeah.
See my whole guts out, I don't think I would have handled that well.
Yeah, I think they asked her, like, do you want a mirror? And she was telling them the whole time, my husband's not in here, my husband is not here. And they were just ignoring her the whole time. And I was furious I was like, had I missed that, y'all would have had to call the police up here. Because I felt so lucky to be there, because I had just been on deployment and I was worried, like, what if something happens and I miss the birth?
That's what happened to him.
I can't even imagine.
He watched
Salty.
Yeah.
Salty.
His first one on FaceTime. So by the time we had the COVID restrictions for number 5, and they're, everyone's freaking out about not getting to be there, I'm like, I've already had to do it on deployment one. This is not as bad as that.
Yeah. I consider myself very lucky because I got to be there, but I saw, several people. I didn't know that you had missed it, but I knew several other people who, they had to watch it on FaceTime, and all I could think was, man, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, there was when our 5-year-old was born, there was probably like 4 other people in the same boat as me because we're in Spain.
And then circumstances, he didn't meet her till she was 5 months old.
Yeah, because then they were like, oh, well, we're changing, it's now the end of deployment. You can go back if you want to. And I'm like, but they're like, yeah, you got to pay for everything. So it's like a $1,500 ticket. And it's like a 20-hour flight to get from Spain back to the States.
Then you'd have to fly.
And you
all the
only
way
get
to
10
Portland.
days. Yeah. So it was just like,
I was like,
I'll see her when I see her, I
I was
guess.
like, you already missed the big event.
Yeah.
Just wait.
Yeah. Crazy,
Yeah.
crazy stuff.
I mean, it's good. And then, yeah, I was there for, they almost didn't let me in with the last one because of COVID. They're all, because they were just gotten rid of the little band deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Ev, you got to be there, but
Ev, I was there with. Yeah,
but
just for
then-
that little bit, though.
no, you were there for. You got to come back,
Yeah, well, that was.
or you
So
decided.
Chelsea and our
Maybe number
fourth
4.
one, yeah. Everything went smooth. Everything was good. But then Chelsea had a small tear that a week later started hemorrhaging pretty bad. And that was like, she was bleeding out. And then chain of command was like, well, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe you can get up there. I'm like, you don't understand. She's in the ER bleeding out. And they're like, no, you need to fix your lead shit. And so I just got to the point to where I booked a flight and left. And they're like, you need to come back to Spaces and redo your leave shit. And I was like, buddy, I'm going already. If y'all want to take me to Captain's Mast for this, go for it.
Yeah, I had an emergency blood transfusion and emergency surgery, and it was a very, very close call. And so he jumped on a plane, and they were harassing him about his leave shit.
Yeah. You didn't mark the right box. I'm like, buddy, my wife's on a table dying right now.
Yeah. Like I hear that type of shit and I tell people that are, like family members or civilians. And I'm like, oh yeah, this happened to a guy. And they're like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, that type of crap happens all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
But if you're actually dead already, they'll bend over backwards to help you get
Yeah.
Yeah. We're so sorry that this happened. And it's like, well, I could have been there,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. That was a whole mess. When I came back, I got talked to by a bunch of people, and I was like, we can go talk to the big man right now. We'll see who. I'll take whatever licking I need, but there's no way in hell I was missing that.
Yep. I felt the same way about like, hey, if anything happens, I'm gonna be there.
Yeah.
Regardless of, who approves it and anything like that, I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been lucky so far. I haven't had to freak out on anybody. We obviously it wasn't nearly the same circumstance, but when we took leave last November, it took them like 60 days to approve that leave shit. And I was like, hey, I'm not going to book a flight until this leave is approved and I know that I can go. And every day that you take, and I work in a building with 30 people. The CO works right across the hall from me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what is taking this so long? And they were like, well, you're going to have to do like an IATP certificate. And I'm like, you mean like when you leave the country? Because I've had to do one before when me and my wife went on a cruise, when we went down to like Honduras and Belize.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the only other time I've ever had to fill out any of this paperwork. Like, why is this needed? They're like, well, it's just our policy right now. And I call the people to do the certificate and they're like, you're just going to Alabama, right? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, you don't need to do this. I'm like, I know, but I need you to sign something so my command will approve my leave shit. And they're like, okay, well, you're done. Congratulations. You've completed the course, because it was in the United States. So, and we still do that to this day. We have to fill out like a 5 W's, like who, what, when, where, why for leave if you're staying at your house.
Yeah.
How are you gonna?
That's the one thing I do not miss.
Yeah.
Because now it's like I take paid time off, and it's I'll see you next week. Don't call me.
Mm-hmm.
That's not like, let me ask the CO, the XO, the Master Chief, first class, cheating. Like, you don't have to go through all that. And of course, everyone wants to know why. And it's like, oh, I haven't seen my family in 4 years. And they're like, oh, well, I haven't seen mine in 10 years. I'm like, Dave, can I just go home, please?
Yeah, that's not good, man. That's something you need to work out personally. I don't plan on having that type of relationship with my family. You know,
Exactly.
it's crazy. It makes me so angry whenever I see them do that to somebody that don't think they have like people in their corner or their own rights for like taking leave. I'm like, no, they can't do that to you. Tell them to run that shit up anyways.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes a first class will say, no, I don't think this is good. And they'll just deny it. And they'll tell somebody who's been in the Navy for 6 months, no, you're just not going to be able to do it. I tell them, hey, run that shit up to the CO, make him tell you no.
Yep.
And sure enough, they'll do that and it'll get approved. And I'm like, see, now you get to go on leave.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
unless he says no, none of that other shit matters.
Exactly.
So how does it feel to be back on stage?
It's cool. You know, like I said, when I first got here, that was really the focus. That was really what I wanted to be out here in California for, because there's so many more opportunities to do stand up. And pretty much as soon as I got here, I hit the ground running. I signed up for a class when I first got here, just to kind of get my feet wet and do it a little bit more often, and kind of get in with a club in town. And I loved it. It was so much fun. I mean, every week we would meet on Saturdays, and every week I would try and like push myself to come up with a new 5 minutes. And then we had the showcase, and it went great. You know, I had a professional photographer and videographer there, so I got a lot of good footage from it. And my hometown newspaper wrote an article about me.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was really cool, because I was like, holy crap, like, and everybody in my hometown knew, like, man, he's actually out there doing it. And then it was like a week after that, I went up to the Comedy Store in LA and got to perform there for the first time. We weren't allowed to have any of our phones out or anything, so I have no pictures from it, but that was insanely daunting, getting up in front of all these. I mean, we were there just like a few weeks before that, and we saw Joe Rogan do an hour, and I met Chris D'Elia up there. I mean, every time at the time, this was back in 2019, but that was the spot to be. The first time I went up there, I saw Joe Rogan live. I saw Chris D'Elia in the hallway. I saw Ron White. I saw, I think Gabriel Iglesias was there. I mean, it was just like the star-studded event. It was just Tuesday night, so it was the place to be. So my head is like this. I'm like, man, I'm out here doing big shit. And then, took a little time off during the holidays and whatnot. And then January and February rolled around. There was this opportunity to do a show right here on the island that I live on. They were doing a talent show. And, I submitted for it and I got selected. And I got to perform in front of like 900 people, which that was the biggest crowd I'd ever done. It was a theater. So I took a selfie with me in the crowd and I posted it, and I had this guy reach out to me and he's like, hey, so we're doing a comedy series for this new channel we just started, this app called Vet TV, and we think you'd be perfect for it. Yeah. So this was in like March, and we get invited. Me and Fanning actually lives out here too. Me and him, we go to the Comedy Store in La Jolla, and we get like front row seats to like the first showing of the first season. And we watch everybody. And some of these people have been in movies. Like there's this chick, she had done a movie with Clint Eastwood. She was on the lineup for it. Some of these other people have been on Comedy Central, and now they're talking to me about being in the second season. I'm like, holy shit, like this is too much. And literally the next day, everything shut down.
Oh no.
And I'm still in high hopes. I'm thinking, well, this is good. 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks, stop the spread. I can stay home. I can just write. I can work on this shit and be ready. And then it turned into a month.
Yeah.
And I'm reaching out to the producer of the show because I'd gotten all of his contact information. And he's like, yeah, we're still looking at April for you coming to do the audition. Because they had to see you do an audition in front of a live audience. And if they liked you, which they told me I pretty much already had it, they would let you do the real show. And I mean, they were talking about doing a theater for season 2. And, I would have a 15-minute special on a streaming network, and they were going to pay me for it too. So I was like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
And April came and went, didn't hear anything. Then May, then June. And I was like, okay, it looks like we're going to be stuck in this for a while. And, then it just got to be like, okay, well, California is pretty much dead. All the big, huge people start moving out of California, start going to Texas. Joe
Yeah.
Rogan pretty much left the Comedy Store and took half the talent there with him. And, it wasn't until November when I went back home on leave, I got an opportunity to do a Christian clean comedy show at the club that I started in when I was 18. And I got to perform on the main stage, and not doing it for like 6 months. I was so nervous. Like, I didn't invite anybody to it. I kept it real quiet, and I was like, look, I just want to go. I want to do it again just for fun, just to get the feeling back. And I mean, it was like riding a bike. Just like I stepped right back into it, like I'd never even stopped. And then it was cool to do it again, but then I come back here to California and it's still on lockdown. So I'm like, okay.
Comedy right now.
I'm sorry.
Nobody's doing comedy there right now.
No, it's back now. It was just, I'm talking about Christmas time of 2020. It was still locked down.
Right.
There were people putting on shows, but all of them were like outside in like people's backyards.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the big name clubs downtown, they were just fighting to stay open. So they would just move chairs out on the sidewalk, and then they'd put up a little PA system with a mic, and they were doing shows outside, which, I applaud them for doing it because they're business. They got to try and stay open. But, there were people that were telling me that they'd be in the middle of their set and a homeless dude would walk up and start shitting like right next to them, or start screaming or try to fight somebody in the crowd. And I was like, I'm not trying to go down there to do that shit.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll just wait it out. And slowly but surely, it was around June, and it opened up again. And as soon as it opened, I went right back out and just hit the street again. And since then, I'm just kind of easing my way back into it. I'm actually, next week, I found a venue here on the island that wants to host a weekly comedy class. And I'm going to do my best at trying to actually be an instructor for it. I wanted it because normally like a given night of going out to the comedy clubs here, I usually my wife will take me to the ferry landing here on the island, and I'll ride the ferry across into downtown, and then I'll just walk the streets. I'll go to all the different comedy clubs and try and get up as much as I can. And then I try and get back on the ferry and ride back across. But there's no guarantee you're going to get any stage time. It might just be completely wasted. And I was like, you know what? There's nobody hosting any shows here on this island. This is the perfect place to have them. So I'm trying to get like a little, start my own shows here on the island and bring in some of the talent from the city over here. So, fingers crossed that everything works out on that. This be my first, real go at like trying to book my own shows and actually run a show, not just perform on one. So, but yeah, that's pretty much how things are going now. just hoping that everything stays open, hoping that all the craziness has finally kind of washed over. And I think now so many people have just been like, all right, hey, I mean, obviously I know it's rough where you guys are, but I feel like pretty much nationwide, even worldwide, people are like, look, hey, if you got vaccinated, you should be okay. At least that's what they're telling us. So, you know, if I have to wear a mask somewhere, it's irritating, but I'll do it if I have to. But I make them tell me, like, hey, you need to put a mask on.
Mhm.
Other than that, I mean, just a few months ago, we went to Vegas and we saw Dave Chappelle at the MGM Grand, like 40,000 people in there,
Nice.
just to come back to here. And they're like, okay, we can only have 10 people in the club tonight. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, but it's been good. I mean, everybody's just like, fuck it now, you know, people are just setting their own rules. Like we went and saw Andrew Schultz like a month ago in LA, and Fanning had bought me those tickets as a Christmas gift in 2019 because
Oh
he
my,
was supposed to film his special in April of
Yeah.
2020 there in LA. And I was like, this is going to be crazy, like to watch him film his special. And then everything got pushed back like 4 or 5 times. And then he finally was like, all right, we're still going to do the show there. I'm just going to film the special in Texas. And, you know, it got time to go to the show. And I'm thinking, you know, this is LA. We're going to have to show proof of vaccination just to go. He said, nope. He's like, there's not going to be any show proof of vaccination. Just come on out, have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And we got there and you just had to wear a mask when you walked in the front door.
Yep.
And then everybody took them off as soon as they got inside. But that's pretty much it. You know, I'm trying to get back into it a little bit more regularly and trying to get some shows started here. And hopefully, you know, kind of start running my own thing over here in my little neck of the woods here, so I don't gotta go into downtown all the time.
so are Zoom shows like not a thing anymore?
Not anymore, thank God.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
sure that some people are still doing them, but like even when they first started, I was like, oh God, please no. But I just told myself, I was like, well, this will give me an opportunity to at least get some type of feedback for material, and it'll keep me writing and like working towards something and knowing like, oh, I got a show on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'd sit just like this and do them. Like I put
Yeah.
my little headset on, which I have a microphone and stuff, but it doesn't pick up audio as well as this cheap $9 headset does. So
Mm-hmm.
this is what I use half the time. But I mean, I did the San Diego Comedy Festival just like this. I think you actually
We
paid to
watched.
watch it, which I really appreciate because I was like, God damn, I'm gonna have to get people to watch this and it's gonna be on Zoom. It's gonna be awkward, but I really appreciated you guys watching and everybody that, you know, watched because it was just super awkward. And I was just happy that I got selected for it because it was a real comedy festival.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent in footage for it and they were like, you've been selected. And I was like, what? And then it got pushed back 18 times to finally, they were like, all right, you know what? We're just going to do it on Zoom. Even though in Vegas, they're doing the World Series of Comedy next week, which I didn't get selected for, which is okay because it's the World Series.
Yeah.
I don't think I was quite ready for it. And the video package that I sent in was pretty old because I don't have any like new footage. But you know, there's always next year. I might do it before we slide out of California, which we're ready to leave.
Yeah, I feel you.
Well, I gotta say, after watching that, it was because I mean I've gone to like more comedy club shows than I can count. I really, really enjoy them, but with the Zoom thing, it was you could tell like people were either funny or very much not because it was interesting not having like the crowd like to work off of. Like there wasn't a bunch of laughter that just kind of like got you laughing along with anybody else. It was like you were either cracking up because you really enjoyed the material or you were crickets.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean,
Which you were funny. You were
I
really
appreciate. Yeah, I they told me like when my time slot was like 3 days before, and I didn't really have anything new. And I was like, I'm just gonna do some stuff that I know works.
Mhm.
But you know, a lot of the stuff I do, I try to act it out actually like on stage, and having to do it in a screen this big is
yeah,
it's difficult. So I did my best, and I was like, you know what? Hey, if I place and I move on to the next round, I do. But if not, you know, who gives a shit? At least I got to be a part of the festival. And you know, it was what it was. A lot of you could tell, and I'm not being biased. You know, I didn't get through. It is what it is. But you could tell some people were like, hey, to 20,000 followers on Instagram, hey,
yeah,
watch
Yeah.
my
and
show. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Yeah, I see how this is going to go now. So,
Yes, because there was definitely some people that stuck out that were like to me very funny, like you and a couple other people, and then some I was just like, oh man, how?
yeah, we just look at each other and be like, what are we watching right now?
and that, I mean, that even happens in like real, like
Yeah,
live competitions.
I
Cause I
think
did,
it's more highlighted because, like I said, there's no crowd, there's no anything.
you have to wait for a time delay too. Like when you're
Yeah,
there and it's live in a crowd, like you can see people's facial expressions. You kind of feed off the energy in the room.
yeah,
And it does change based on the venue size. Like it's a lot different performing in a theater than it is performing in like a small club, just because the acoustics in the room are different.
Mhm.
But that all comes with time, like learning all of the like how long should you wait after a punchline before you should expect some sort of laughter to come back to you. But yeah, with the Zoom thing, you might say something and it's just nothing. And you're like, okay, that one didn't work. And you start saying the next line, and then that's when you hear everybody laugh. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
kind of have like a oh thanks, you know. But I mean it's the same way, even like for, you know, like a live competition. I got to do the funniest person in San Diego in February. I just put my hat in the ring for it just to see where I'd end up. And that was actually the last time I performed before everything locked down. I was I had done stand up like every night for like 3 weeks. So I was exhausted.
hmm
And I was like, all right, when I finish this, you know, funniest in San Diego thing, I'm going to take a little break because it'll give me like a few weeks before the next round. And I'm just going to focus on it if I make it through. And I went down there and I just put all of my best material that I had into that because I really wanted to see how well I could do in the contest. And I did not get selected. And I was so furiously mad walking back to the ferry landing that night. I was like, something's going to happen. It's going to cancel the rest of this whole
yeah,
festival this year. And it did. It was like 2 weeks later and they had to shut it all down. And,
hmm
you know, I wish that hadn't happened now. Looking back at it, I wish I didn't, you know, wish that something happened to shut the whole festival down. But I get really competitive. A lot of the bigger shows that I've done have been contests, and I get very competitive. But now being older and I've been doing it for almost 10 years now, if somebody just beats the shit out of me, I'm like, yeah, they deserve to win.
yeah,
That Christian show that I did back in November, it was a competition, and the winner would actually like get paid something and like get, you know, all this promotional stuff put out for them. And there were some guys that came down from New York, and they all were regulars at the Comedy Cellar in New York.
Oh wow.
And they were like, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm from here originally, but right now I'm in California and you can't do stand up there." And they're like, "Yeah, we're from New York and you can't do stand up there either. That's why we're coming to do this show." And I got to meet him, but there was one guy, the second he walked out there, I was listening from backstage and I was like, "Fuck, I just lost." Because he ripped that room in half. And I mean, he only had 7 minutes, but he probably only needed 3. Because it was like Mortal Kombat, but the controller on my side was just unplugged. I was like, I'm not going to be able to compete with him. He's too good. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's cool getting back into it. Hopefully this comedy class that I'm going to be teaching takes off and I can actually start getting some book shows over here. Cause that's the thing. All the like comics from all around San Diego, they're already like, "Hey, if you're looking for a feature spot or a headlining spot, I can do 30 minutes of clean material. I can do 20 minutes dirty material. Like, let me know what you need." It's just getting regular Joe schmoes interested in it, wanting to take the class and, be a part. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build like a community interest in it. And if I can get people that want to take the class and, hey, I'm going to put on a showcase and there'll be all these local people in it. I can incorporate, local businesses into it. Then it becomes this bigger thing. And that's when I can actually get people who are road comics, actual professionals that are just based out of San Diego to come do the show. So, but hey, we've been on here for about an hour and 45 minutes. So I think we'll go ahead and try and land this plane. I really appreciate y'all sitting down and talking with me today. I know we really didn't have anything planned to say or anything, but I feel like those are always the better episodes when we just get on here and kind of hang out.
Hey, it was great.
Yeah, it was awesome. It's
Thanks for
best to
having us.
just chit chat, I think.
Yep, that's what I try to do. Just people I haven't talked to or seen in a while. I just like to catch up, see how y'all are doing. And I'm glad y'all are doing so good. I know it's tough up there in Oregon right now, but I'll be thinking about y'all and I hope it gets better.
Hey, hopefully soon for everybody. You're in too.
Yeah.
And just land the plane, get out of this storm,
Yeah. Well, hey, like I said, I really appreciate you guys chatting with me today. And hopefully, maybe sometime in the future I'll have you back on and hopefully you won't tell me that y'all got a 6th baby on the way or anything like that.
Not that. Maybe a dog.
I hear that.
For kidding.
No.
All right. Well, y'all take care. And I'll talk to you guys later.
All right. Have a good one.
You do the same.
All right. Y'all take it easy.
You too.